Welcome to Revlog, where this week we seem to be caught between Star Trek and Z names.
Yes.
I don't know what was going on in our sort of pre-filming conversation here, but
the world will never know.
We never know what's going on in our pre-filming conversation.
I know it is just free-flowing and
I did have
not worth much.
I did have someone ask me in church yesterday about the outtakes, and I said the world will never see what happens before the camera rolls.
Those are in a vault somewhere.
Someone has got really good job security hanging over us.
Right.
Yeah.
We have to get all of our complaints and jokes out before we start filming.
I don't complain. My jokes. I'm just saying.
That's right.
Sure. Exactly. Whatever.
Now,
We complain about your jokes.
We do want to give you a little insight into our pre-recording here, because we really don't know what's going on with the lost verse here.
The lost verse.
Right, or is it the forbidden verse? Right, so it's,
the
again,
last one, right?
Baptist Way Press ends this in the middle of a sentence with one verse remaining. But we're cut
It's
off.
like a dangling participle.
We're not supposed to read or deal with this dangling participle. So
Maybe just keep you wanting more?
I have no idea. I don't know why we stop in the middle of sentences.
But you should know that Pastor went ahead and read it anyway. So
He barreled
did.
on through.
he did.
Right before we started shooting. Yeah.
And I feel fine with it.
Yeah.
I have no problem with it. But so we finish up Judges 8. We went all the way to the last verse of Judges 8 here.
Please feel free to do the same.
That's right. But there's some interesting events that unfold here with Gideon and leadership and with the nation of Israel. And it's a little shocking. I'm taken a little bit aback by the events here. You know, Aaron, as you read this, I mean, what struck you about these scenes?
Well, really, I'm glad that we've taken so much time to watch the arc of Gideon, just to kind of go through, because the Gideon we're reading about now has a much different carriage about him. You know, just how he speaks to people. I mean, we're going from the guy that, well, let's put some dew here. Let's put some dew here. Are you sure this, you want me? I mean, to this guy that, is taking a sword out and killing a guy because, killed his brothers. And but what strikes me is this conversation that he has, the Lord is going to take care of you. The Lord is going to watch over you now. Are you using those gold earrings? I mean, Gideon doesn't take a breath, and he out of one side of his mouth he says, God, the Lord your God is going to take care of you, and in the same thought he goes and makes a really bad choice and sets them up. I mean, Scripture goes on to say that Israel prostitutes themselves with their worship. They're already off center before he dies even, and it's such a sad end to this story.
Right, and the ephod, it says he makes an ephod, which is generally a religious article, but it turns into this idol out of the spoils of war that I guess on some level it may have been worshiping himself, right? That we did this, and that became, it says it became the snare to Gideon and his household, and Israel just spirals out of control, even out of the Lord's victory, which is... it's kind of troubling on some level. Like, has that happened to us? Mm-hmm. Will that happen to us? Because we're certainly not above that either. Right. So, Bryan, as you read, what did you see?
Aaron, your statement of God will lead you or watch you or take care of you, it seems to be a way of saying, therefore, I don't really have a lot of responsibility here.
Gideon. As I read that, I thought the exact same thing. Almost a Pilate moment. Yeah. Just saying, I've got no responsibility here.
Right.
That's how I read that too.
Right. Exactly. And so he goes on autopilot.
Oh, these are the jokes we were talking about. These are the ones we were supposed to be done with.
This is what the complaints actually come from. Is the horrible joke.
I know. Was that horrible joke the one that made it through the edit?
I guess.
Is that the one we kept?
Wow.
We started with Zima and ended with autopilot?
Autopilot.
I don't know. Go ahead, Bryan.
If his first name had been Otto, Otto, that would have been weird. Autopilot. Anyway, okay, but no matter. The place of Gideon to lead, he doesn't seem to have given any thought or carried through that with that careful curiosity. He had all of this curiosity in the before times, leading up to this major victory, and then all of that in the ensuing years seems to have just gone out the window. He's no longer spiritually curious. He's no longer asking, "Is this the way?
Yeah.
Do I have this right?"
Wow.
On some level, I picture, we see professional athletes sometimes saying, "Well, I'm not your role model, right? Nobody look up to me. I never asked to be your kid's role model." And what you see, if Gideon here is sort of, saying, "I'm not the leader," kind of a thing. You see him still doing that because he leads them into this idol worship, right? So as he falls
by default,
falls into laziness, so does the nation, right?
Yes,
so as he falls into worship of self or this idol, this ephod, and his family falls down that into that trap, so does the nation. And so whether he wants to admit he's leading the nation or not, he seems to be,
and
right?
by his actions.
That.
Yeah, that's right. He says, "That's not my responsibility." Yeah, he says, "I don't have any." He washes his hands of it, and it is also sort of like Moses' brother Aaron, who says, "Out came this, out came this calf, out came this ephod." I don't have anything to do with that. But the once vaunted leader, like this professional athlete in your example, has just let himself go, and spiritually speaking, and ethically speaking.
Well, and to be clear, we are making an assumption about his statement, but I think there's evidence to support that.
I think
in the text.
It's not a favorable reading of Gideon's person or his attention to spiritual matters.
And we gave him quite a good pass early on
We sure
when
did.
there was a lot of questioning of God, and we were pretty quick to say, we understand where he was coming from, and on the other side of this, it's not looking as favorable as in my read.
It really shows that the most carefully attentive person, and whatever else you say about Gideon, he was carefully attentive in his early days.
Right.
Where is that here?
Yeah.
There is none of that here.
I love your curiosity.
Curiosity.
And I guess my follow-up, do you want my follow-up, Pastor?
Yes, Aaron, would you please provide your follow-up?
Your rebuttal.
I'm so glad.
And to move us forward, your question.
Well, yeah, absolutely. So just, if we are to work out our salvation with fear and trembling, that do we think that we're done? Did Gideon think that he was done with his assignment?
That's a great question.
Because when he was questioning, when he was really having this dialogue with the Lord, when the Lord greeted him and said, you're going to be the guy, and there's a lot of dialogue, and then he got to the mountain and they were done, and it just appears that Gideon thought, check.
How would he have answered that? Hey Gideon, do you think you're done?
And I think
you're done.
And I think we all need to have that when we discern what God's calling us to, that He's a one and done kind of God. And we don't want Him to be that in how He forgives us. So we shouldn't expect that in His assignments for us. So do we think that God's done with us? That we've got no more assignments?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Bryan, what was your question from the text?
My question is, right now, am I on a spiritually, emotionally, and physically sustainable course? Am I on a course that will be physically, emotionally, and spiritually, either any of those orders? I mean, for that, in all three of those domains, is that sustainable? And it has to be all of that, because that's the entire person. Spiritual, emotional, physical, that's the entire person. And, we don't know what Gideon's physical state was, but certainly his spiritual and emotional domains of life, he was spiritually curious early on and very carefully attentive, but he did not sustain that. Whatever was the case with him, it was not sustainable. And so right now, am I on a sustainable course? He didn't secure the peace. He did not stay the course until the end, and it all fell apart. And is it sustainable?
Yeah.
Yeah, good question. Yeah, we thank y'all for listening and being with us as we've come to the end of Judges 8 today, and we would love to hear your comments if you'd send them along.